The Jewel Garden has had an interesting time of it this year because, like everybody else, it's had to cope with this extreme heat and drought. But on top of that, it had a major revamp. It took months to take everything out, and then we started to replant it this spring. But then, of course, it's had to cope with the weather. And some things have done really well. The Tithonia, for example, the Mexican sunflower, loved it. Been completely at home. It's an annual, planted it out in June, and it's just romped away, producing masses of flowers. Some things have surprised me. This is a Helenium, Sarhens early. It was flowering in June and has kept on flowering without break since. It's gone from Sarhens early to Sarhens late. Maybe this is adapting to the changes really well. Clematis have surprised me. They're over now, much earlier than normal. And they've set seed, but while they were in flower, they were magnificent, even though they weren't being watered at all. And this is a plant that needs moisture. Because I think we hadn't dug it up, we'd left it in the ground, the roots were deep, and it was accessing moisture further in the ground. Some plants, however well they've done, will need winter protection. And our salvias are a good example. Salvia curviflora here, completely happy. Normally that's a bit iffy. But whatever type of salvia it is, I will have to give them winter protection. And as well as taking them in, I shall be taking cuttings. Now, coming up on today's programme, Joe visits an organic flower farm in Bristol, which is at the heart of the local community.
I'm chatting to you right now and I'm realising I have to be picking 100 stems an hour.
Keep moving then. I feel like
actually
just give me a pair of secateurs, I'll be joining in.
We head to a garden on the south coast, built by a mother to give her children a truly intimate connection with nature.
I wanted our children to have a feeling of wildness and the plants being taller than them and enveloping them in wilderness.
Adam meets a ceramicist who has used her artistic eye to create a superb prairie-style garden.
I've focused less on colour, more on contrasting forms. Daisy-like forms like the echinacea and the helenium, but then contrasting that with plate-like flowers like the achillea.
And we find a spiky and unusual North London garden, packed with exotic plants.
Although a lot of people would think that they were tender, actually about 90% of what there is here is perfectly happy to stay outside and thrives over the winter months.
Ned has taken to getting up on the ball, thinking that it's winsome and somehow it'll make me like him more or give him food or something like that. I don't know what it's about. What's it all about? Or maybe you just think you look good. Silly boy. Come on. This is Salvia amistad. I've grown it in a pot this year, not knowing we were going to have the drought, because I could give it extra drainage. And I knew that it would cope with relative lack of water, because last summer it was very wet. And of course, it's loved it. Absolutely loved the summer, covered in flower, as it has been for months, and I'm really pleased. So certainly that's a win. Nevertheless, although it is robust, and although it does survive lower temperatures better than most salvias, it doesn't survive in this garden. Combination of wet and cold always does for it. Whenever I've tried, I've always lost the plants. So I need to take cuttings, because that ensures that whatever happens over winter, I've got a fresh supply. What you're looking for are side shoots. So you have the main stem, a leaf, and then at 45 degrees, a shoot coming out from it. And a side shoot without a bud or a flower, and that is perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Now, you can cut that, but sometimes you can just peel them off, and they take a little bit with it. So that is perfect. And can you see that that's got a little bit of the main stem attached to it, which will help the development of roots. Now, as ever, when you're taking cuttings, have a polythene bag to hand, and that will buy you a little bit of time, because the minute you take a cutting, it's a race. And it's very simple. It's a race against the plant dying, because you cut it, and creating new roots that will keep it alive. And by popping it in the bag, you're slowing down the dying process because it's going to die of dehydration. We've got another one on the other side. I can take that. Perfect. That. And these are just breaking off. Don't need succatus. Come on. So, got a penknife to do the cuttings, got pots. I've got perlite. You can use just any gritty mix. You can use pure sand, but drainage is key. So take them out one at a time, and then with a knife, clean that off there. Don't worry about losing material because all you're doing is setting this up to grow more. So that is now ready. And I find that salvias take very well in just a pure mix like that. And pop that in the corner like that. Okay, that's one down. Okay. Once you start taking cuttings and they strike and you grow new plants, it's so exciting and so liberating because you suddenly realize that you can create dozens, even hundreds of plants for free. And the fact that you've done it and you've enabled it to happen is really empowering. I love it. Pop that in, water them, and then any kind of propagator where you can close the lid, even if it's just a cover over a seed tray, will help. And just mist the plant 2 or 3 times a day. And it will take about 10 days, 2 weeks before you start to see new growth, and that means it's got roots. Then you can pot them on into potting compost, grow them on, keep them over winter, and they'll be ready to plant out next year. Now, we're going to join Adam as he visits a garden down in the southeast corner of the country.
I've come to the Kent-Sussex border, which is a part of country that is not short of glorious gardens. And today, I think we're in for a treat. We're going to meet a gardener who has transformed an old horse paddock into a big, bold garden, driven by her love of the arts. Emma Burrell is a ceramicist by trade, but her whole life changed when she laid her eyes on this piece of land. Since then, she has been transforming this space, and the result is a beautiful Prairie-style garden. Emma, first of all, wow. I've walked in and there's a certain feeling to this garden. Take me back to the beginning. How did it all start?
Well, a friend of mine told me about this place coming on the market. We came and had a sneaky preview, and we thought the garden was just this section that we're standing in, and it turns out it was a lot more than that. So I was delighted, my husband was horrified, and that was it. We just sort of fell in love.
So when you moved in, what was the garden like?
There wasn't really a garden here. It was basically paddocks, overgrown fields, sort of knee-high grass.
So when it came to the design,
Yes.
you got the main garden laid out on paper?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
So I started to think about all my fantasy bits of a garden I ever wanted to grow. And then we just did the garden in little sections. So we did the borders one year, and we might plant 2 hedges another year. And then the orchard, we put that in one year. I'd say we're still doing it. I'd always wanted to divide the studio off slightly from the rest of the garden, but I didn't want a solid division. So I'd seen someone using grasses as a hedge. I planted that variety. It's Calamagrostis, Carl Forster.
Carl Forster, yeah.
I planted that variety because it's very upright. It's got a really long season of interest.
When I'm stood here, you can see the proportions, you know, of the house against the the studio, and this more or less links the two together.
Yeah. I think you have to be generous sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's a bit scary putting in 200 grasses, all one variety. They came in quite big pots, so I could divide them in half. So I divided them all in half, so I've got twice as many plants, because I'm always one for a bargain.
What I like about the way that you've set things up is that shape and form is incredibly important to you.
Yeah, I think I've focused less on colour, more on contrasting forms. So I've got daisy-like forms like the echinacea and the helenium, but then contrasting that with more sort of plate-like flowers like the achillea. And your eye kind of follows all the way through the border with the achillea because it's such an intense colour. I've mirrored the planting in both sides, so your eye gets drawn from the house through to one plant there, and then it moves over there, and then you get drawn into the landscape beyond.
So what about watering?
I don't water anything. I water when I'm planting, and I plant quite small plants, and then I just let them get on with it, send their roots right down. And
which I think they have, and you've got some really good, strong planting, and everything's holding its form really well, isn't it? And I suppose when we talk about the form, for you, that's incredibly important.
Yes, it is, yeah. And that contrast between different forms as well just keeps the interest going.
And as you're walking through space to space, you come across things like this, which for me are living architecture. They connect the buildings together. They add this point of relief. They're different sizes, different shapes, forms. But Emma's created them. In reality, they are just 3 hedging plants that have been planted and then tailored. They're beech. And actually, as these brown, as the winter goes on, they connect beautifully with the calamagrostis over there. Great idea. Also, I like the simplicity and the honesty of the materials. You look at the timber deck, it's textural, and the walls, they're timber. The colours are absolutely beautiful. And then look, I'm going to take you back, late 60s, early 70s, council paving slabs. They are the first thing that I ever laid on the council, the old 3x2s, and I tell you, they were really heavy. And then a concrete planter. So the whole place, there's this simplicity, and then there's these strong lines, and then there's this planting that just brings it all alive. It really is lovely. Oh, look. I'm going to describe this as more loveliness.
Oh.
So, how did this part start?
So this was actually a thick layer of compacted rocks, gravel, and then another thick layer of sand on top. So rather than trying to improve that, I just tried to see what would survive within those conditions. I collected together lots of North American prairie plant seeds from all over the place. I got all excited about these amazing plants.
Yeah.
That didn't go very well. I thought, OK, we'll have to try a different tactic. So I planted a few plants like the veronicastrum and things like the euphorbia, that pseudo-vagata, which is very invasive. And I wouldn't put it in a border, but actually in these conditions, it's done really well.
Yeah, it does its job.
Also, I've got a perennial sunflower, the helianthus, at the end there as well, which that is in a slightly better patch of soil.
Also, it's a wonderful demonstration of how good plants are at adapting.
I know they want to grow, and it's amazing what they can grow in.
You know, you seem to thrive on that challenge. Yeah, I'll give that a go, see how that gets on. And
yeah, because then you're surprised, and there's that sense of satisfaction as well. It means everything to me, this garden. I think because of all the work I've put into it, but also the pleasure that it gives me and other people. I love being in it, but I also love the evolving aspect of it and just the physical aspect of gardening. I couldn't live without that.
I think this place is a great reminder that so many lovely gardens are about people, but also that constant experimenting, which guarantees you one thing: this garden will definitely not stand still.
What I really liked from that was the brave simplicity of the design. Sometimes it's much harder to do a very simple thing like those 200 grasses than it is to chuck everything at it and have a sort of wonderful jumble of plants, which can look fantastic, of course. But to be pure and simple and then bring it off like that is really good. What I'm doing here is the middle process of a three-part progress from seed to planting out into the garden. These are ruby streak mustard, and they're one of a number of greens that I sowed just a couple of weeks ago. And I love them for their peppery, sort of hot, mustardy taste in greens as part of a salad in winter. And of course, you can also cook with them. So I've sown them. They germinated very quickly, probably a little bit too thickly, but that's okay. And then just tease out individual plants with as much root as possible, always holding by a leaf, because if you hold it by a leaf and the leaf breaks, it can grow another. Hold it by the stem and it breaks, that's it, you've had it. And then I've already put compost into these plugs. Just gently firm it in. All leaf crops I grow like this. And the advantages are that you can focus in on individual plants very young. So rather than thinning as they're growing, you thin basically at this stage, and then each of these has space to grow and become a nice strong plant. These now need a good soak and to be kept watered. Don't let them dry out. Put them somewhere protected until they're ready to plant out. At this time of year, most salad crops take 2 to 3 weeks to establish a strong enough root system. But once a plant has grown on, it's time for stage 3 in the process. This is rocket. Now, if I take out a plug, first of all, it comes out complete, and it holds together in my hand, and you can see the roots on the outside. It's not root bound, but it's solid. Now, that's the perfect moment to plant it out. So I just plant that in there, push it in. Now, when you sow seeds and you thin, it seems incredibly radical to thin to even 3 inches apart. You're discarding so many plants. Whereas when you're planting out like this, and especially with rocket, I would recommend at least 6 inches, and preferably more. So this sort of spacing is ideal. And the reason for that is because you will then get really big, strong plants that you can repeatedly cut and harvest. And I reckon to get 3 good cuts from each, or to just take a few leaves from each. And that means actually you get more of a harvest than if you plant them close together. There is a reason why rocket is grown either in early spring or in late summer, because it hates hot, dry weather. It just immediately bolts. Now, normally, if you plant it out or sow it at the end of August, you can expect the weather to get a bit cooler and hopefully wetter. But if you don't have the resources to water it regularly, don't plant it. Just wait till it cools down, even if that means waiting for another 2 or 3 weeks. However, with any luck, if you do, and you can water it, make sure it doesn't dry out. It'll grow well, lots of lovely tender leaves, delicious eaten raw. Really good cook, by the way. Rocket pesto is fantastic, and you use walnuts rather than pine nuts, and maybe even cheddar rather than parmesan, and it's really good. OK, they're watered in. And we're off now to Crouch End in North London to visit the garden of Steve Buckley and Liz Roberts.
I'm Liz, and this is our garden in North London, where we've been for the past 15 years.
And I'm Steve. I'm a sculptor by trade, and I work at a bench down the garden. Bit of an obsession with geology, hence the rocks everywhere. I'd say the garden is Mediterranean, exotic, spiky, lush, evergreen. Mediterranean planting is increasingly viable in this country because the climate's changing. Generally to negative effect, of course. And the way we plant, what we can plant, is changing definitely too.
Most of the plants you see here, although a lot of people would think that they were tender and they did need to come in for the winter, actually about 90% of what there is here is perfectly happy to stay outside and thrives over the winter months.
Some people are surprised by exactly how much is hardy and does stay out. So for instance, that big puya in the curvy pot is happy outside all the year. That Yucca rostrata will be happy to -10 or more. And so is this Dioun edgerly, which I absolutely love. Beautiful sculptural plant. Doesn't look hardy, looks like a house plant. It's tough. It's been out here over last winter, no problem. Cycads, for instance, the common one, Cycas revoluta, is available everywhere as a houseplant. But there's one down there that's been there for about 10 years outside, and it's now a wingspan of 6 or 8 feet. There are other cycads here which we really love. For instance, one called Encephalatus leymanii, a blue, glaucous blue thing. I occasionally think I should risk that over the winter outside, but I love it so much I'm a bit twitchy about trying it, so it comes in. The garden's full of palm trees of various types. This is possibly my favourite. It's a Trachycarpus princeps, and it has this secret of having blue undersides. I just love the structural shape, the architectural shape of it. Tough as old boots, planted straight in the ground, possibly with a bit of extra drainage, some grit. I can't remember the last time I fed it, and I can't remember the last time I watered it. And it's happy as Larry in semi-shade.
This garden looks great, looks the same all year. It doesn't go into hiding for the winter. Mahonia soft caress is one of my favourite plants, one that I think more people should know about. It's great in shade. It's got these lovely delicate leaves, much softer foliage than some Mahonias. This will get big blushes of small yellow flowers, along with a beautiful scent in late winter. Very easy to grow, very tough as well. I mean, people are always looking for something that's good in shade, and I think this really has a lot to give in that respect.
The fact that these plants thrive is partly to do with where we live, but it's also to do with the drainage. I think drainage is more important than position, to be honest. We're very careful to give them conditions that they like, and it's not that difficult, really.
I love the agaves that we've got in this garden. I think my favourite has to be the agave americana. It's absolutely stunning colour and gorgeous leaf shapes, really, really big and amazing plant. This plant is absolutely hardy. It needs no protection, and it's withstood everything that's been thrown at it for years.
There's a lot in common, I would say, between sculpting and pruning. I do think that the act of pruning, maybe taking a bay tree, which I've topiarised actually into a roof above my bench, it's the same kind of skill, really.
My love of exotic plants has extended into the fruit and vegetable area. For example, the shiitsu, which is used in Japanese cookery. We've got pineapple sage, and then we've got this beautiful Szechuan pepper tree, which is totally hardy. It has very fragrant leaves, big spines, and then it has all these wonderful peppercorns. Now, these can be made into a pepper. They also give a very unique sensation of tongue tingling.
It sometimes surprises me how much exotica grows in the dark, almost, or at least semi-shade, like this Spidisporum tabaira, and this gorgeous, I think, Daphniphyllum macropodum with the blue underside to the leaves. This Fatsia, spider's web, I think really works in the dark because the definition given by the variegation shines out of the darkness at you. Plants like to grow outside, even proper house plants. They weren't evolved in houses and they prefer to be in the sun and the rain, given half a chance. That saguaro cactus is actually planted on a little mountain of old bricks, shingle, grit, topped off with heavy rocks and facing south, so it kind of thinks it's in Arizona. Some people see the garden and ask, is it high maintenance? I have a couple of thoughts on that. One is, I don't really regard it as work. It feels like fun. And the other is, it's definitely not low maintenance, but it's not as hard as it looks either. Most of it doesn't need much help at all.
I always marvel at the differences in growing conditions on this small island, because there you have Crouch End, which is only 150 miles away from here, but another world when it comes to growing. I could keep almost none of those plants outside here at Longmeadow. The aeoniums, for example, have to go in about 6 weeks' time. And it's the combination of cold and wet which does for most of those plants. The key thing is to try avoiding that combination of wet and cold. If you can increase the drainage, a lot of plants, particularly Mediterranean ones, will survive quite cold weather. I'm improving the drainage of the compost here by adding a lot of grit to my normal compost mix, which is a mix. It's peat-free compost that I buy in, which is bark-based, and then we add our own garden compost, leaf mold, and perlite. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to plant out some amarines. Amarines are a cross between nerines, which are wonderful, elegant South African autumn bulbs with spidery petals on a long stem, and amaryllis, which we all know and love. And the amaryllis gives the nerine a little bit more oomph and substance, and they're at their best in October, so very much an autumnal thing. And they share the same characteristic, whether it is an amarine or a nerine, of having a distinct nose on the bulb, a long proboscis that sticks up above the main body of the bulb. And whereas most bulbs you plant deep, usually twice the depth of the bulb, like that, these need to stick out of the soil. So you want to bury them only to about that depth, which means you can use a shallower bowl. Always use terracotta for this type of thing, because this is really decorative. This is an autumnal joy, so use the best pots you possibly can. Crock in the bottom. We'll put a layer of the gritty mix. So now I've got 3 here. They don't need too much space. They will flower better if they are crammed in to a certain extent. Right, now we will put some more compost around them, keeping those noses sticking out the ground. And then I'm going to dress these with a surface of grit. The main reason is because it looks better, but also it does stop compost splashing up when you water them. This is a variety called Aphrodite, wonderful candy pink, spider-like flowers. These are now ready. Now the important thing is to give them as much heat and light as you can. These are plants that if you plant them outside must have really good drainage in the sunniest spot that you possess. I'm going to put these in the greenhouse, and then when they start to grow, then they can go outside just on the point of flowering to give them every chance of success. We're going to join Joe now. He has been going around the country visiting gardens that have one particular characteristic, because they are created and looked after by people who not only can make a lovely garden, but also can simultaneously nurture their community.
I just love to meet horticultural heroes, those people who fly under the radar. You know, those rare individuals who are doing great things but don't make a song and dance about it. And that's why I've come to this flower farm on the outskirts of Bristol.
It's called Heart of BS13, and they grow beautiful flowers for the local community and beyond. But here's the best bit. Through their social enterprise work, they also offer people mental health and well-being support. To find out more, I'm meeting manager Sol Harmsworth.
Hello, Sol.
Hi, Joe.
So you're picking and you're deadheading as you go through. So some good ones here.
I know.
Come on.
Off of their heads.
It's a beautiful cosmos, isn't it? It's gorgeous.
It's stunning. This is our apricotta. It's like a rusty orange.
Yeah.
Florists love it. But we have to get the cosmos when they are so fresh. When these buds haven't pollinated, they're barely open.
So tell me about the setup, because there's a whole ethos.
Yeah. So we're a social enterprise, which means we're part of a charity that is tackling health inequality in this postcode. This postcode is in the top 10% of multiple deprivation.
Right, wow.
Which means a lot of people have much more disadvantage into education, into employment, into nutrition. We can offer volunteer programs, trainee programs, and employability skills. The exciting thing is the wholesale industry want to buy our flowers. However, we have to work at a pace. I'm chatting to you right now and I'm realising I have to be picking 100 stems an hour.
Keep moving then. I feel like
actually
just give me a pair of secateurs and I'm joining in.
Jill Carpenter is a volunteer who grew up in the area, and today she's one of a team preparing these wonderful Rebecca for a wedding tomorrow.
So if you've always been local, Jill, I'm interested to find out how you think this project has affected the local community.
I think it's affected them greatly because this is the green space that we've got left. All the building work going on, you need something like this. It's great for the youngsters from the schools coming up. And you're not just stuck in a house.
Yeah.
You know, if you're retired, some people just sit there, don't they, you know, watching TV. That's when your mental state gets worse, I think. If people can come out and do this, even a couple of hours a day, would improve the situation so much and save the NHS a lot of money.
Vicky is from Hong Kong, and for her, the flower farm is a place to connect with people and nature.
I'm in here to make us so many friends. They are very lovely and nice. When you look into flowers, you will be happy and enjoy, and the sun's shining.
And Jack is the farm's most recent recruit.
So you're the newbie then?
Yes. So I've only been here for 2 weeks now, so can't claim any credit for any of the hard work everyone else has done so far.
What made you want to get involved then?
Recently I've sort of been having a few sort of well-being issues. So this was first and foremost excellent for my mental health. And to be honest, it's sort of, I realised recently that I really wanted to make horticulture my career and sort of make that jump over to, just sort of actually make that change in my life.
Fabulous.
Positive change, and it's fantastic. I mean, being mentored by the guys here is amazing. And I mean, who couldn't love it up here?
As well as offering the local community life-changing opportunities, the team here are intent on nurturing the soil and the wider environment, which means they're completely off-grid.
They're low impact, they're incredibly resourceful, and always thinking of ways to develop what they've got here. So the polytunnel is about 300 square meters of roof. Now, when it rains, they can capture a lot of that rainwater by using this gutter. It goes down into the tank here, but because they're off-grid, they've got a solar panel which powers, round the back here, a solar pump. And that solar pump goes into this drip feed system and irrigates the whole of this polytunnel, which is just fabulous. And when it comes to composting, there's compost heaps everywhere here. They're trying out different blends, they're finessing it, just getting it right for seedlings and for planting out. So resourceful. In fact, they're actually going out into the community out there as well and asking them for their food waste to bring it into the site to compost that too.
Food waste is collected from local schools and businesses by electric bike, operated by another horticultural hero, head of compost, Jen Liggett. Back at base, she can start the process of turning it into high-grade material for the growing beds.
Right, so the food waste has gone in there, and then you're going to chuck some of these wood chips in.
The wood chip in so it doesn't get a big smelly mess.
Okay.
So we'll do that now.
What's the proportions?
So it's the same amount of food waste to wood chip. We're just creating an environment, a bit like a stomach really, where all the bacteria can just have the perfect environment to grow really.
As the mixer is turned, internal blades break down the waste.
Anything coming out yet?
Yeah, it's all coming out.
And after around 10 days, it's ejected from the other end as a starter compost.
Yeah, that's hot, isn't it?
The temperature was checked today by Ben, and it was over 60 degrees, and that's literally just the bacteria. It's just like loads of people going into a nightclub, it just gets hot.
Steamy.
Once collected, the fresh compost is transferred to large, well-ventilated maturation vats, and from there to the finishing bays, turning food waste into flowers. It's really inspiring to spend time here where plants, nature and people are encouraged to thrive. In the hands of the farm's florist Clem Richards, it's an ethos which delivers on pure beauty too.
So when you're creating something, do you tune in to where it's going, who it's for? That emotional connection, I guess, is quite important.
I want people to know that when they see their flowers, that they know that a lot of heart and soul has gone into every piece. The fact that they've been grown with all this love and care for the planet, care for the soil. I think what we're doing here with the volunteers, with the environment, it sits well within this acre and a half that we have here.
It's just fabulous. It shows it can be done. You're proving it can be done. A model that hopefully others can follow too.
I think it's interesting and really good news that more and more people are buying British-grown flowers that aren't having to traverse across the world to reach us. And let's hope that's a trend that continues. Now, certainly more and more people are buying and consuming blueberries. But it is something that we tend to think of not part of our garden fruit vocabulary, but that's wrong. They're really not difficult to grow at all, as long as you follow one or two basic requirements. And the first is they really need an ericaceous soil. Now this is a bought ericaceous mix. It's actually made up of a mixture of coir and bark. Just remember, an ericaceous compost is acidic. It's for plants that need acidic soil. And that is non-negotiable. So you can buy it. You can also make it. So for example, leaf mold, which I've got here, does very well as an ericaceous compost. It also improves soil structure, which means it retains water. So I will be adding it to my bought compost. The second thing is choosing your variety. Now, I've got 3 varieties here. I've got this one, which is blue crop. It will harvest about July, August. Good berries. A plant will grow to about 4 or 5 foot tall. Very reliable, pretty hardy. Not all blueberries are completely hardy, so that's a good place to start if you've got the room. I've also got a much smaller variety here called Top Hat. This is designed to be grown in small pots, very productive. Brilliant if limited on space. And finally, I've got this one, which is one of the oldest varieties, which is called Jersey, and it's fairly large. It will grow to 7 foot. Now, doesn't matter how big they are, they all need to be grown in the same way. So we start off with ericaceous compost. Right. I think I want a bigger pot for this one. They're going to spend their lives in a pot, so you don't want to be repotting them endlessly. And this is a plant that likes lots and lots of water. I've got my leaf mold and I've got the mix, and I'm going to mix it up. So let's put some of that in the bottom. I don't need to put crocks in the bottom because the drainage holes are to one side, and anyway, I don't want this to drain too much. A little bit of my leaf mold, mix that in. There we go. I gave this a really good soak. I'm going to pop that in there and hold it, and leaf mold around the outside. Right, a little bit more around there. I'm leaving an inch or so at the top for water. These are plants that should never dry out. Also, they are plants, because they're ericaceous, that should be watered with rainwater if at all possible. Because if you've got hard water, if you've got limey water, you're adding lime in quite noticeable quantities to the compost, and that will affect the plant. So if you are growing blueberries on anything other than the smallest scale, just think about where you're going to get your rainwater from. It may be the incentive you need to install a water butt. Some varieties are not self-fertile. All these 3 varieties are, but all of them will crop more heavily and better if you have 2 to cross-pollinate. And of course, they don't have to be of the same variety in order to pollinate each other, as long as you've got 2 plants that are flowering at the same time. Okay, that's set up there, so I'll give this a good soak and put it somewhere warm. Now, in winter, I have lost blueberries, but I found that if you put them in an unheated greenhouse, or if you've got a conservatory or a porch, that will protect them from the worst of the weather. And that's it. Easy. Grow your own blueberries. I will now give these a good soak and enjoy the autumn colour when it comes, which it will, and hopefully, fingers crossed, be enjoying the fruit this time next year. Now, blueberries are a plant that need a lot of control, a lot of gardening, very specific conditions. But we went to visit a garden on the south coast where the whole point of it was to be free, to create an atmosphere that encouraged wildness, not just of nature, but of human spirit too.
We moved to this garden in 2017 after we had been living in London for about 6 years. We had 2 children and we're in quite a small flat, looking to live somewhere a little bit more rural. My name is Flo, and this is my garden in Deal in Kent. I grew up in Amsterdam, in the city centre. The area we used to play in was in an area in Amsterdam called Geuzenveld, and the island we used to play on translates in English as the Rough Reed. Every morning we'd wake up early and we'd climb across on our little raft, and we'd go to the island and we'd climb through all the weeds and the brambles. And I wanted our children to have a feeling of wildness and the plants being taller than them and enveloping them in wilderness. I wanted them to remember this garden as a big garden, even though it's such a small space, but by making everything so tall, by putting different paths through it, they could have it sort of almost fall over them. You have to sometimes fight your way through it, especially later in the year as things start to fall over. Do you like playing hide and seek in here?
Yeah, it's quite tall grasses, which make it easier.
Make it good for hiding?
Yeah, when you walk down the path, the bees go all over you.
Yeah. So there's lots of wildlife, isn't there?
Yeah.
Do you remember when we had baby blue tits in the garden?
Oh, yeah.
Lots of the plants in this garden are grown from seeds that I've collected and then sow them, sometimes in pots, sometimes direct, to see if they'll come up and if they'll be happy here. But I take a lot of their behavior from how they behave in a natural space to try and get a similar natural feel in this garden. This area, I would say, is about 80% self-seeded. There are the sea holly, this comes from the beach. And then in there, we've got the purple toad flax, the linaria. The seed heads are so pretty and they stay all winter. And then we've got teasel, which is also from the beach and from the fields around here, which the goldfinches love. And it's very much a garden that I hope supports wildlife. There used to be a concrete slab here and we removed it. And I piled the concrete into little mounds over there so that we've got little mounds of rubble and sand for the bees to nest in and the ants like to nest in there. When we moved here, I had no idea of what to do with gardens. I knew nothing of plants. So it was all quite a big learning curve. The garden was done in a very sort of traditional way. There was a lawn and on the edge were 2 long borders, and the house also being quite long, it made it feel like a bit more of a runway. So by taking those out and giving it more of a width and then cutting the path at an angle, we tried to create a little bit more of different movement for your eye to wander through. As you move through the garden here, it gets even taller and it sort of moves a lot, so it gives you a sort of a multi-sensory feeling. You get lots of the noise from the birch tree, from the leaves rustling. Because we're on the coast, you get lots of wind, so there's movement and sound as you walk through this. This is the calamagrotis grass. It's a real Dutch, sort of almost like a national grass now. I love it for its movement this time of the year, but I also love particularly how it behaves in the winter. It goes really pale and golden and it stands up straight. It adds structure to the garden. So through here, next to the calamagrotis, we've got lots of beautiful fennel, all from the beach. And these were all tiny seeds I collected about 6 years ago. And it started to drift through the garden. But this is the original batch and it grows every year bigger and stronger, and it really reminds me of Greece, and the scent of it is really nice, and it's filled with pollinators, and it stands beautifully in the winter. The last few years, I've noticed we get more extremes. We either get extreme rainfall, and then we get such long periods of drought. So it's a garden that can be resilient because it's got the prairie-style planting, but it also has the Mediterranean planting. And because the soil is quite poor and quite dusty almost because of where we are, those plants cope really well. This is a lazy person's garden. I do very, very little. I let things do its own thing. I spend about a weekend in March cutting everything back, packing it up and tidying it. And then I might spend a couple of Saturdays just pulling out anything that I think is growing too intensely, too close to another plant that I'm keen to give a bit of space. But other than that, it does its own thing. I'm happy with the slight messy look of it. I prefer it. I think because so little money has been spent on any of the plants, so much has been grown from seed or has just arrived in, it means I'm less precious about changing things. If something doesn't work or we need to change the shape or something else is needed, I'm quite happy every year in the winter to plan, work out what everybody wants, and then adjust the plans accordingly. When we kind of finished with this space, I realized I also really enjoy growing fruit and vegetables. And there wasn't any space here, and I didn't want to put anything in here because this is a different type of environment. It's more meadow-like. But the parking area is also south-facing and is ideal to grow vegetables. So with a bit of convincing my husband, we decided to park the car on the street and to put vegetable beds in there. See what's in there, shall we?
My favourite thing to go and harvest is potatoes because it's like an Easter egg hunt.
What have we got here?
Lovely.
Well done. Yeah, it's a bit hairy, this one, isn't it? It's a different variety. That's all right.
I like it because it keeps my mum busy. You can just pick them and eat them, and then it's just an easy snack.
Is it good? Yeah? There you go.
Juicy.
Is it? I think through doing this garden, I've learned lots about plants and horticulture, which has been amazing to learn about. But more than anything, it's been just a joy to have this space with the family, to share it with the kids and my husband, and to have this space to invite friends over, and also a space to come at the end of the day and relax. I think the kids enjoy the space, but I hope that they look back on it and they know what it feels like to walk through a space that is buzzing. I hope that they have an experience of the natural world that as they grow older will recognise in other spaces.
I think of that style of gardening as being essentially Dutch. And obviously it's spread right across Europe, has been hugely influential in the last 20 years. And clearly, as you see in Flo's garden, it works on any scale at all. Now this is the exact opposite of that. Whereas Flo's garden is loose and free and has this sense of being growing and self-sown, this completely artificial shape, growing as something that is highly manicured and man-made, and doing exactly what I wanted to do here in the writing garden. Because these privet lollipops I planted to pick up and mimic the round shapes of the alliums that flower here in May and June. And they do that beautifully. And also the other thing that I found it does beautifully is give it structure in winter. So it's doing a double job for me, and that works. Right, let's just clip that off. The reason why I haven't been giving these their due attention is partly because of the drought. They haven't grown very much, but also because I have totally ignored the writing garden for the last 3 months, and there is a good reason for that. Because I have planned and have known that I need to change the shed in the writing garden. And I have changed it in quite a dramatic way, because now this has replaced the writing shed. And this is the doghouse that I had on my dog garden at RHS Chelsea back in May. The story of this building began last February when I designed it from scratch using reclaimed materials that we salvaged from all over the country. Bits and pieces. It was never a building. And it was designed completely to fit in the space at RHS Chelsea. Now, it was offered to Battersea Dog and Cat's Home along with the rest of the garden, and they decided not to take it. I then discovered it was going to sit in a builder's yard and be plundered, bits and pieces used for different projects over the coming years. And I thought that was really sad. Now, we've changed it slightly. We've added the sliding doors. We're going to line the inside with old scaffolding planks because this is going to be a working building. This is going to be a potting shed for the really big pots that we use right across the garden. And I have to say, that as a memento of that extraordinary experience of making an RHS Chelsea show garden, it's great. I'm really glad to have it here. And now that it's up, it means that I can turn my attention to the poor old writing garden that's been neglected and get on with jobs here. Well, that's my work cut out for me. Here are your jobs for the weekend. If you're growing tomatoes, particularly out of doors, you have to cut your losses and remove any trusses with fruit smaller than a marble, because the whole object is to put the energy into ripening existing fruit. Take off the tops of the plants and then remove the bottom half of the foliage, and this will expose fruits to as much light and heat as possible. If you grow rhododendrons, azaleas or camellias, it's important to make sure that they are watered regularly now and for the next month or so. This is because next year's flowers are forming, and if they're dry at this time of year, the buds are very likely to drop off before the flowers open next spring. Although some seed heads should be left because they look great in winter and also supply food for birds, others do need to be removed, such as these lilies. Lilies have finished flowering. Remove the seed heads because they're taking energy away from the bulb and therefore next year's flowers. And with Nephofia, when they've finished, cut them right back at the base of the stem, and that will encourage more flowering this autumn. Come here. Good boy. Good boy. For all the work that there is to do in the garden and all the jobs, there's one thing I hardly ever do, and that's sit. And certainly not sit here in the jewel garden. It's nice. I've forgotten what it's like. And it's a good time of year to sit and take stock because however we look at it, it's the end of summer. And there's a new season coming up, and that's full of all kinds of interesting things. And I love the September light, and there's lots of jobs to do. But right now, it feels like the door is closing on summer. And I don't feel sad about that. It's worth taking stock. And surrounded by the flowers of the jewel garden is a good place to do it. But I'm afraid that's it for today. I'll see you back here at Longmeadow in a couple of weeks' time. So until then, bye-bye.
you.